Takes a second to go. Hopefully this one is a bit better than last time. We're not doing two things at once, and I feel like I tried to streamline my computer to be a little bit better. Okay, it looks like it's loading. Looks like it's loading.
So you're using OBS to basically capture your screen
Yeah,
and
I'm using, this will be the
Funko.
first time doing Discord as the platform. But here we are. We are live. All right. I'm going to share it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our inner sanctum. We are the ChainCraft experience. Did I do it
Welcome,
right?
one and all.
Yeah.
I believe
I
that
was
was
told to be
good.
more theatrical, so I'm feeling a little jokerish. I'm feeling a
By
little wild cardish today.
yeah, by theatrical you mean creepy.
What are you talking about? It's just my face. How many meetings have we been in together in our lives, Eric? And now you're telling me this? I can't believe it. Yeah, I'm
Well,
feeling like a little RNG-ish today. So
yeah.
what we're gonna do today is we're gonna kick off this potential series. I think everything we say should be caveated with um, potential because anybody who tells you that they know who are going to be the winners and losers in this space in the great AI space race um, is blowing smoke and doesn't know. So I really appreciate when people in emerging technology caveat everything with "We're going to try this out. If it fails, we're going to learn from it very quickly, and then we are going to move very quickly with purpose toward the actual thing that we're building." All of that being said, ChainCraft, to give a little bit of a premise, is an AI-powered on-chain game maker where game developers can have an upshot for quote unquote failure. So we're redefining failure by saying all of the sweat equity and energy and creativity that developers put into their work should still have the highest possible chance of giving them a financial upshot because this is all a business and people need to eat. So we believe that the creative energy and capital that's put into this space is being severely underserved. And we believe that uh, providing AI tools that can accelerate the process and path toward iteration and experimentation is the lifeblood of the industry that we love so much. And allowing all those assets to be put on chain is what provides the incentive model for those developers to feel like it's worth their time to engage in those risks and that experimentation. So that's what we get hyped up about. That's what we get psyched about. And that's what my throat gets really just messed up about. And Eric, who's our CTO, has been working on some just amazing um, prototyping for what Chaincraft can become. And I think what we're going to do during this session is let Eric walk us through just some of the down to the bare metal really work that he's been doing in innovation. And we can interject, ask questions, talk about possibilities, applications, and anybody on this stream that's watching should also participate by um, inserting comments and questions. So with that, I will unmask myself. It is I, Matt Daly, product person, working
It's
with these other
you
two brilliant
this whole
people.
time.
It's me. It has been me the whole time.
And I would have gotten away for it too if it wasn't for you kids.
We need Scooby Snacks as
Oh
our,
man.
that'll be our token, Scooby Snacks.
It's Scooby Snacks.
Oh man.
So I
Yeah.
think maybe Eric, if you want to screen share or intro or whatever, I'll give the floor to
Yeah.
you.
Thanks. So, you know, one of the things, if you've been following us, we've been talking about um, is this idea of having a AI produce an intermediate language from which we can generate games. And what does that do for us? Well, one thing is like we're not trying to get AI to generate code for a game. Um, which is still a pretty challenging problem to solve. So we can generate this intermediate language, and then we can generate code for games for lots of different platforms using more traditional, software engineering. So we get the benefits of the AI creativity and working with the user who doesn't know how to write the code for a game, but the benefits of like applying the best practices and the clean architecture and the code and performance and everything from generating code. So what I've been working on, in order to do that, we have to be able to teach the AI how to produce this language, this game definition language that has never seen before because it didn't exist until we created it. And essentially, when you're dealing with AI, there's a couple different ways that you could do that. One way, if you have a lot of data, meaning a lot of like input for what you want the AI to do and output for what good looks like, is that you can fine tune a model to produce exactly what you want. Um, but that requires a massive amount of data. And we just defined this game definition language. In fact, it's still in a bit of flux, so that's not an option for us. The other way, and the approach that we're taking is that we kind of train the AI through its context window. So essentially, we allow the AI to produce something that is bad, and then we tell it why it's bad, feeding the errors to its context window. And the idea is over time, it will improve. So in order to do that, we needed to come up with a way to validate um, a game definition. So a lot of what I've been working on is the game definition and the validation of it. And so I will show some code off here. Okay. Whoops.
Let's see. Yeah, I can.
Are
Okay,
you
there we go.
are you,
Can
are
see
you
it now.
seeing code now? Okay. All right.
Now
So
we see your Discord.
oh, I shared the wrong window. It's always a challenge. Let me try again. Oh, screens. Okay. All right, let's try this again.
There
Now,
we go.
are you seeing? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so we defined a specification for the game definition language. Um, and all of this, by the way, is available on our GitHub, which is right here. If you go to ChainCraft.Games, um, we have the game def repo, and that's where you'll find all of the schemas and the information on our game definition format, as well as the validator code that validates it. So we defined this spec, and one of the things that we wanted to do with the game definition is we wanted to use an entity component system, ECS is what it's commonly called, and that's just going to give us a lot of flexibility to grow this game definition language to be able to ultimately have any kind of game um, modeled in the language. And so we started with this spec and then created. So I'll show you an example here for a memory game. So this is um, the memory game that we've all probably played as children. You have a grid of cards and you're flipping over cards, and if they match, then you get to take the cards. Um, and so this is what the game definition looks like for the memory game. So we have uh, actions and components identified and listed, um, and then we basically have entities that have the components attached. Um, and so all of these actions, all these components, everything have a JSON schema associated with them. In our schemas directory here, we have schemas for all of our actions and components and things like that. We also have um, a registry of all of the different components and descriptions of what they do and links to the schema, which we use in validation. And we have something similar for the actions. And so what we did was we created a validator um, that can validate all this. And there's a couple different components to this validator. One is one is just a straight up schema validator. So the schema validator essentially reads in the game definition file, figures out which schemas, which components go with which schemas using those files that I showed you, and validates it according to the schema. We also incorporated a rule set validator, and a rule set validator takes a rule definition that looks like this, um, and runs those rules. And this is really important because we want to be able to give the AI some freedom um, to come up with things that we haven't thought about. And if we were really, really rigid on the rules, then we sort of constrain its creative freedom. On the other hand, if we're too lax on the rules, then it comes up with unplayable game definitions.
Mm.
So by using a rule-based approach, we're able to kind of hit that sweet spot, and we can continually monitor this and change this. So if we introduce some new concept and we find out that 90% of the time the AI is doing something wrong, well then we can go in and add a rule that makes sure that it's not doing that. And so this is a really powerful. It's kind of based, if you're familiar with code, it's kind of based on the linting idea, where we can essentially go and we can lint our game definition, and it will tell us whether or not there's any errors and how severe they are. Um,
Can I
so,
ask I'm gonna interject occasionally with
oh
caveman
yeah, absolutely,
questions.
absolutely.
So for anybody who's watching this, my background is in product and design, and I do pretty much everything except coding. So that's why Eric and I make a good uh, duo here, and the three of us make a good trio star system, whatever you call that in astronomical terms. But when it comes to linting as a comparable, how different is this than when you are like running a compiler or running like a code checker, um, and getting errors spit back at you? How different of a concept is this?
It's really kind of similar. And basically I can show you kind of the output here. Um, if I go to the so
Okay, so it's running all this stuff. You're running all this in Jupyter Notebook, right?
well, this is a CLI. I just got to get back to my command
Okay,
here. There we are. So I can run this command, and it's going to go validate um, this. And in this case, it's completely valid. So it said,
right,
hey, there's nothing wrong. But if I go in here into memory .yaml, and let's see, I'll just mess this up, right? So like I fat fingered the inventory ref. That's not a valid inventory.
right,
Um, and I run it, then what's going to happen is it's now going to come back and it's going to say, wait a second, there's an invalid reference. Matched cards 1 is not a valid inventory ID, right?
right.
So um, so that's the idea, is that you'll get these sort of validation errors that will tell you, uh, what's wrong. And like I said, they could be schema errors where you violated the schema, or they could be sort of like um, reference errors or best practice errors. I mean, we could have something in there that says,
Hmm.
in fact, I do. For example, let's say in your
Right.
states, uh, let's say I comment out this trigger here, or I comment out this transition.
Right.
Um,
Which is syntactically not going to be an issue, but might be
right. So
problematic
that
from a functionality standpoint, right?
yeah, right. There's no oops, actually that's not the right place to do it. Uh, let's say I go into the state here. There we go. And I comment out this transition. So this is, states are entities. They just have a list of components. We would have no way on earth of knowing from a syntax point of view, like that that's not a valid state. In fact, it is a valid state, right? But
Right.
you save it. But if I go and I run the validator on it, it's going to say, hey, wait a second. Your game setup state has no outbound transitions and it's not an end state. So your gameplay would have no way to exit the state once it entered it.
Right. So
Right. So that's
that's where it starts to get juicy, right? Is that this assistive accelerating technology that helps the user, the developer, the ideator get through their process and
right.
either succeed or fail as quickly as possible, right? So that they can move on to the next thing or the next
Exactly.
iteration.
Exactly. So
Sick.
so that's the validation logic. And we needed to build that because hopefully we're going to be engaging with the community to build these game defs for sort of known game designs. So we can use that data eventually. We do want to train our models to be really, really good at putting this out. So we needed to have that validation for the human validators, but we also want that validation for our AI, um,
Hmm.
because that's how we're going to give our AI feedback, and it's going to get better and better and better, and eventually produce something valid. Um,
Can I digress us a little bit more even and just talk for
yep.
a second about this intersection of um, the open source or open core ethos and how that intersects with the tools that we're creating, the business model that we're positing, and the community based on chain incentivized model that we're proposing for community building, how those all kind of like are related to each other, maybe just the open source and AI generation and involving the community. Do you want to talk about, because you're so involved with WebGL and Babylon and the open source, you're such a big advocate for open source. I'd love to hear like your thoughts on that as the chief architect on this whole project.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, open source is the way that this gets built. Um, in a it's a way this gets built kind of at all, right? But it also gets
Right.
built in a way that really kind of benefits the community at large. So it's a way that our community can get involved and help us build this product, accelerate the building of it, or like I said, even really enable the building of it. And it's a way that the community can steer the development towards the areas that are of particular interest to them. So for example, we're not going to be able to create definitions and for every game mechanic that's out there. So if you've got an idea for a game mechanic, or you've played a game and it has a game mechanic, and you're like, hey, I want to build a new game based on that same game mechanic. Then open source is how somebody can come in and say, okay, I want to create this game mechanic. I'm going to do a pull request. And now that game mechanic is part of Chaincraft. And it's available for the AI to inject into gameplay. Um, but
Hmm.
in terms of like how open source kind of helps us, at bootstrap this is, we will need people to come in and define rules. So like as you go in and you start finding and you start playing with this and you start finding like, hey, it's constantly doing this thing wrong, right? Well, then you could come up with a rule. We've got a really, I showed it to you, a really nice way. You can just go and add a rule and give us a pull request for that. And now, that
Right.
rule is in there and it's helping make sure that the AI is not doing that. Or,
Yeah.
like I said, the example I've already kind of given of like there's a game that you want to define, and there's an action that's missing or there's a mechanic that's missing. The open source allows the community to kind of add that, so they're not relying only on our manpower
Hmm.
to sort of expand the scope of what's possible.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I mean, I think that's so core to the sort of the ethos of decentralization is, far precedes Satoshi's white paper. Like, it's not a blockchain specific Web3 concept. It's just we are working on, as other projects have, pretty like exciting incentive models for early entrants into our community and those that are going to be contributing early and regularly to make this rising tide kind of lift all boats. I think that all that ethos ties together so excitingly, and I just wanted to make sure we're talking about that as much as we can. Maybe what we talk about now is, um, the setup that we have here, and this is the setup that I'm starting to see the entirety of, or much of, the AI industry. You saw OpenAI, doing their launch of Omni just very recently. We're essentially getting to the stage where we're creating these agents that are talking to each other and improving each other.
Right.
Um, so, do you want to talk about, at a real kind of like a layperson standpoint, POV, like what are the agents that are involved in this structure that you have right now, and what are they doing with each other?
Right. Yeah. So at this stage, and there will be more agents that will come along, but at this stage, we're really focused on kind of three agents. So the first one is our game design agent, and what I have here is I have a notebook. We're just, while we're defining agents, we're playing around with using OpenAI. We're actually using ChatGPT 3.5,
Hmm.
just costs low, just to kind of prove out the concept. So the results that we're getting now are going to be much, much better when we're using either for Omni, if we're using OpenAI, or when we're using uh, other LLMs that are available, like the IBM Granite for code and Llama 3 um, for the conversational. Um,
So what's
so
the relationship between those three? We have OpenAI ChatGPT 3.5. We have Granite and we have Llama. Are they all being utilized right now?
no, I mean, so really, there's kind of two directions that we might go with this. One is an OpenAI approach, and OpenAI is sort of stop segregating their models.
Hmm.
So if we go OpenAI, like I said, we'll end up with four Omni, and it will do kind of everything. And I'll describe what these three agents do. Um, if
Okay.
we don't go with OpenAI, then we would essentially be hosting our own models. Um, and there we would be using more specialized models, like I said, such as the IBM Granite model, which is one of the top performing code generation models out there, and then Llama 3, which is just a great general purpose conversational model.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so, in terms of our agents, the first one that we want to talk about is our game design agent. And this is just a straight conversational setup where the user is describing a game they want to create and they're having this dialogue um, with an agent to come up with a really, really comprehensive but natural language description of the game. And so we envision this as an iterative process where the user's like, hey, I want to make a game like this. And, maybe the AI is going to come back and ask some questions, or it's going to make a suggestion or what have you. And we sort of modeled that a little bit
I
here.
love this. That this is the prompt. I have to interject the prompt here. It's like the motivation for like an actor. It's like, listen, you are an excellent game designer. Your
I know.
job is to excellently design games, and it's like, okay, that's my motivation. Great, let's do it.
I got to say, one of the funniest things is that as I'm building this and as I'm creating these prompts, Copilot is suggesting the prompts to put in there. So,
It's
it's like
it's so
so AI
cyclically
is
weird,
basically deciding how to build AI. It's a
right?
little surreal.
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
So yeah, so this is just a pretty simple setup here. And so I started with a prompt of I want to make a game that challenges players' memory and strategy. I want it to be played with 36 cards. Pairs of cards will have the same image. So I'm describing the memory game, and the idea here is like this is an experiment to see how well I can get AI to match, the known good memory YAML that we had. Um, the AI is going to come back with the suggestion for the game, and then I'm going to prompt it with an update or an improvement, and it's going to come back with that improvement. Um, so basically, here, the AI has come up, and it's done a pretty good job of coming up with a very comprehensive description. Right, this is enough description that you could go off and you could write the rule book for this game, or you could build this game. Um, so that's pretty good. And so one of the things that it did is it said if the cards match, players keep the cards, earn a point. Whoops, sorry, this is the original one. The player keeps cards, earns a point, and takes another turn. And so we prompted it back and we said, well, that sounds good, but let's maybe let each player take one turn per round, whether they match or not. And then that way the game will be more strategic. And so it's come back now and it's basically given us a revised game design. And, now it said the player does not take another turn. So that's just an example of how conversationally we might approach this. And I'm sure anybody who's really played with AI conversational interface, this is very very familiar. Um, so once the game design agent has kind of produced something that is ready to be made, then our next agent is our game maker agent. And so our game maker agent is responsible for taking this natural language description and coming up with that game definition uh, format that we talked about earlier. Um, right now, because we don't have a whole lot of schemas and just for expediency, I'm feeding it the entirety of that information. So I'm feeding it the specification document. I'm feeding it all the schemas, and all of that's coming in. It's getting the game design description from before, and that's all kind of getting mashed together. Here's where we're loading all of the information, uh, and then we're asking it to produce a game. Um, and it's done an okay job. Like this stuff here is not actually correct for how actions work, um and the components. Like it's actually gone and kind of replicated the registries, the component and the action registries here. But it's done some good things. It has defined um some of the cards that are needed for the deck. I actually did a run earlier and it did a much better job where it defined all 36 cards. Um,
Nice.
and it's defined some states and it's figured out like, oh, okay, I need to shuffle the deck and then I need to um, reset them and then let's see somewhere.
And
Okay.
these are generated like these were not written by you.
Right, exactly. Um,
Fantastic.
so it's figured out that it needs to, ask the player to flip cards, um, and
That's awesome.
it's figured out that it needs to sort of take the flipped cards and put them, in a different inventory. Um, so it's like I said, actually the one I did before did much better. And probably what's going on here, um, in fact, I'm just going to run this again and see if because I'm curious. Probably what's going on here is that there's a problem with AIs, and particularly older AIs, that I think they're starting to fix with the newer generation, called needle in a haystack. And basically, what happens is if you have a lot of context, then they can lose track of what is
Mm,
happening earlier in the context. Um, and so I think that's probably what's happening, is that it's like losing track of some of the information
hmm.
that's earlier in the context. But it's an interesting experiment to see. All I didn't change anything about the AI. I mean, I changed a little bit about some of its prompting here. Um,
Hmm.
but really, a lot of what I did is I went and I changed the documents in the background. Like, I changed some of the spec documents to clarify certain things, and I changed the registry's document. I changed some of these descriptions, and I got a very different result. And so
Interesting.
it's interesting, and it's cool because you know really, if we can come up with the right uh, way to describe all these things, we stand a good chance of getting the AI to actually be able to understand it and generate it. Again, when we get to a stage where we've got enough data, where we've got 1,000, you know, um, sample prompts, and like what good looks like, then we'll be, in a much better position. But
Right.
for right now, like, this approach should yield some fruit. And so the third agent, which I don't have modeled here right now, is the validation agent. So what it would
Hmm.
do is it would take uh, this definition, and it would run it through that validator, and it will get the errors that look like this. And then we will prompt it to basically say, okay, based on these errors, tell the other AI what changes it needs to make, or where it's missing the boat, or where it's lacking understanding, right? Like, so basically coach the other AI on what it needs to do to get better at generating this. Um, and those two will just basically sit there and iterate and talk back and forth, until the game maker produces something that's reasonable. Um, Now
Nice.
that could get expensive, and that's why ultimately, if you've got enough data, you want to train it, because there could be a lot of back and forth conversations. But you know, uh, in the absence of data, this seems like an approach that's going to yield um, a pretty good result. And I've got some ways to reduce that context window to solve some of the needle and haystack problem, where I think basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the AI say, hey, here's the elements I want to include in the game. Could you please give me the relevant documentation for it? And then we'll just give it the documentation that it needs, rather than overwhelming it with a bunch of stuff that it doesn't need and confusing it.
Mm. Hmm. That's amazing. I'm really enjoying humanizing algorithm design in this way, making it more natural from from an interface standpoint, and just generally kind of flattening access. I think what comes next for some of the stuff we're doing is we're going to do more of these more regularly. The goal is to start opening up and really kind of put our open source money where our mouth is. Start sharing more of our code based on GitHub. I mean, we've been doing that since the start anyway, but putting some kind of like radical transparency, honesty into how we're presenting this, and really starting to invite those that are part of our kind of inner circle to start getting involved, start getting involved early, start helping us refine, and particularly start adding to our definition of what is good. Um, and I think you're going to start seeing some pretty exciting acceleration of that pretty soon. What do we think is next? What are some of the juiciest things that in the near term until next time that we do this, Eric? What are some of the juiciest things that you want to be focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, the next step really is to introduce the validation agent, and start this dialogue and conversation between the game maker and the validator, to to prove that that interaction can result in a valid game definition that has all the elements that it should have.
Right.
So that's going to be the focus. Um, and then after that, it's it's sort of multi-prong of doing more experimentation with more game devs. So we have some other game devs that we'll be producing, and this is a place where the community could help a lot. Is like coming up with these game devs,
Hmm.
even before we're to the stage where uh, we're ready to use that data to train. I mean, just coming up with a game def for a game, and then letting us use that and see, how it does. Or eventually, and I'm not sure exactly when this will be, eventually through Discord, you'll be able to, the community be able to go in and actually run our agents and run through a process, and get results. So, all of that is coming. And then, um, you know, independent of that, we'll also be working at the same time on building out sort of our game engine, so that these games actually are playable. Um, and probably we'll be doing that with in a web platform, probably using Babylon, to create some simple game engine, that would let you that'll let you play these games.
Very cool. So again, like the path run here is, thesis validation and then bringing people in more, seeing that sort of rapid acceleration happen when we start getting more people involved and contributing. Um, we have a question from the chat that I wanted to address, which is from VHS Crypto Stick Tag. Basically, can the question is, you guys got games on your phone? So mobile games, I believe, or will be as what we're building here is kind of platform and hardware agnostic. Um, we're certainly not there yet where we would be putting publishing games to mobile, even like in a web app format. But I think that's a little bit of what Eric was talking about, starting to use WebGL as a delivery mechanism without publishing to the App Store using web apps. Eric, do you want to talk about what what that could look like eventually if somebody was trying to build a, let's say, for instance, simple CCG card game, for instance, which is, by the way, for everybody who's watching, the reason we're using cards is because we feel that we can create a focused domain specific language around the rule sets around cards as opposed to other more elaborate um, uh, game design genres. So what would that look like if somebody was eventually going to put something onto make a mobile game?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why we have chosen to use this intermediate format is because we don't have to train the AI to produce a Unity game, or to produce a iOS game, or to produce a whatever game. We can just train the AI to produce the definition, and then we can build translators or engines for whatever platforms, that can put the game that can create the game for that platform. So mobile is absolutely part of that. Headsets, web. Um, and the other thing I think about us, and that approach, is that we're avoiding the creation of a walled garden. So we're avoiding a scenario where we've got a platform and you build your game on our platform, and then that's it. That game is forever on our platform. Um, our intention is that the source code of the game is your source code. If you want to go and you want to, modify that source code, if you want to deploy it somewhere else, then that's up to you. So our intention is that this is a game maker that's going to produce uh, a game that that the person can play, can take to multiple platforms, can play wherever they want. We have to kind of balance that a little bit with use of on-chain assets. So particularly if we get into a royalty scenario, we have to make sure that the smart contracts are able to be honored, and we got to figure out how to do that. But beyond that restriction, and certainly if you're not using anything on chain and it's all just AI generated, then you'd be able to own that code and do with it whatever you want. So I don't know if that answers the question or not as far as mobile.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that from the blockchain side. I mean, it's exciting that you, as a user of any level, intermediate, novice, or somebody who is a game dev professional, like can utilize this, but also can own their assets, own the mechanics that they have, remix it with other people. And it's just like this is still the early stages, but to see what it could become over time with people collaborating together and just having this easier way to iterate different things and fail quickly and then see what's next and how to improve upon that is sort of this goal. And that's also where, I mean, we didn't touch on blockchain too much in this call or in this dev update, but we could do that in the future. But keep that in mind that's kind of the way that we see everybody gets to own what they've built. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Sick. I love that I can interoperate all the stacked insanity that's happening on my OBS. Thank you everybody for joining. This has been a really lovely session. We're going to do more of these, get really hype and excited. And for those of you coming to Consensus in Austin for the ChainCraft Friend Tech meetup, I think it's approaching like 200 people now. So
That's crazy.
it's gone from a nice like casual quiet pint before the parties begin that evening to maybe the party. I don't know.
Yeah, I
We'll
don't know.
see.
That'll be
We'll see
nuts. It'll
everybody.
be It'll be exciting. I'm glad it's a jackalope. So anyway, jackalope, 5 p.m. Thursday. If anybody is watching this, yeah, come check us out. We'll be there. Consensus
Hell yeah.
Austin, the jackalope
Yes,
downtown.
sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right. Thank you,
Call it
Eric.
the
Thank you,
Jackalope
Matt.
Takeover.
What'd you say, Eric?
That you should call it the Jackalope Takeover.
Yeah.
I think I mean, yeah. I was there yesterday talking to the manager, having a pint with him and just being like, listen, this has kind of gotten out of control. And he was like, this is going to be great. So we're all in. It's great.
So he
We
was
wish
he
we
was
wish you
okay
could
with
be
the fact
there, Eric.
that 200 people are going to show up.
I think he's not only okay. I think he's like low key thrilled. He's gonna get a couple more
Yeah.
people in. It's gonna be a good happy hour for the jackalope.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We wish you
Cool.
could be there, Eric. We'll pipe you in via stream, and then when we have some funding, we can actually fly you out for some of these things, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, thank y'all for joining, everybody. This will be available VOD later if y'all want to watch this later. Yeah, we'll be doing more of this. I look forward to it. Take care, y'all. Adios.
There